The power, the power. Everybody, I'd like to welcome you to the May 7th, 2024 City of Binghamton's Commission on Architecture, Urban Design, and Historic Preservation meeting. My name is John Darrow. I am chairman of the board, and I'm going to ask for a roll call as we go around the table. Sir. Glad you're here.
Daniel Need, Commissioner.
Glad you're here.
Mary Ellen Morrow, Commissioner.
Welcome back. You've been dearly missed.
Yes.
Brian Haas, Commissioner.
Glad you're here, Brian.
Wade Crawford, Building Inspector.
Wade, glad you're here.
David Whalen, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir.
Dylan Pelton, Historic Preservation, Planning and Housing.
And? Oh,
Sorry.
you're not?
Juliet Burling, Director of Planning.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Sorry for the delay, folks. You're waiting for some last minute arrivals. Our last attendee is running just a few minutes behind. We're going to kick off and get started at this point so we don't keep everybody waiting. It's not our intent. First item of business, I put my glasses on so I can see. And we are going to call for an approval of the minutes as presented from the last Caud meeting. I have reviewed them. Is there anyone else that has any questions or discussions, or I'd make a motion to pass the minutes as presented?
Second.
Second, Dan, all in favor? You weren't here? You know, we're gonna modify that. There we go. There we go. The motion to approve the minutes is passed. We also have to do the public meeting announcement. Is that what is the public access number? Do you have it? Yeah, like for the meeting, if they want to attend by phone, I've got the planning meeting in the. Okay, I don't,
It's on
I
the
don't-
back.
on the back of, oh, jeez. Okay, so for the public is invited to this meeting, you're invited to a Zoom webinar. Please click the link below to join the webinar, https://us06web.zom.us/I/89266852769 or One Tap Mobile 929-920-56099. I think that fulfills the obligation for the public meeting. Okay, first item on the agenda is going to be 99 Collier Street. Is the applicant in attendance?
He was last in. We did a straw vote. He couldn't be here today.
Okay, then if we're okay to proceed, I think we were just one person short.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the last meeting, the gentleman was here. We did not have a quorum. Mr. Haas, I understand you have to recuse yourself from this. Is that correct? Yes? Yes, okay, thank you. Then the applicants was willing to put a sign on, which was at that time unanimously approved by the board for the new sign for the new business. For Fisher, I think you all have it. At this time, barring any other questions or anything, I would make a motion to approve the sign as presented as we have a quorum.
I'll second.
Second, Dan, all in favor? Unanimous, Mary Ellen abstaining. Or, excuse me, Brian abstaining, recusing. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm so used to you not being here the past couple months. Okay, 142 Washington Street. The applicant, Mr. Mark Yanati. So Mark, come on down. Would like to create a window sign in front of the business and on the entrance door located at 142 Washington Street. You know, there's one in every crowd. We've got a black sheep here, so we're going to make it count. Mark, please identify yourself, name, address for the record. Is your green light on?
It is now.
Okay, who are you, sir?
Mark Yanati, 45 Lewis Street, Binghamton, New York. And I'm the owner of Black Sheep Tavern at 142 Washington Street.
Please make your case.
The case is made, the sign is up, the window decal. We may consider putting a additional sign on down the road, but what you see there is a perfect reflection of what we're here for approvals on today.
And that conforms to the size limits of the city.
Yeah, it does conform with the size
Okay.
limits.
Discussion, questions, anybody? I'm on a roll, or does somebody else want to make a motion? And what is your motion, sir? For 142 Washington Street? I will second that motion. Thank you, Mr. Haas. All in favor? Unanimous. Mr. Yanati, always a pleasure. Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
Thanks.
Keep doing good work. Okay, we are at 213 State Street. Luba, I cannot pronounce your last name correctly, so please come on down. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon.
I'm here
Name?
representing Luba
Okay.
Jurjanovic.
And you
I
are,
am Regina Losinger. I'm the project manager,
okay,
and
contact,
I'm also an exhibiting member at the Cooperative Gallery on the
Con-
first floor.
contact information.
26 Matthew Street, Binghamton.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Okay. You have the ball in your court, my dear.
All right, I'm here today to make a proposal for improved signage and to add lighting to the front of the gallery facade. We currently have no lighting on the front. It's a little scary walking there at night. The lighting that we're proposing is 3 gooseneck lights, one to go over each historic panel. If we can find one that's quality and adequate, they may be solar. We're also proposing replacing our AC Moore letters, lettered sign. That's what you're looking at. There it is. AC Moore letters, and there is a very old banner on the right-hand side. Dylan, you can probably find it on another page. We're proposing replacing those, so reducing the signage. There it is, right there. Replacing that with something that's wrought iron that also extends from the building. There it is, to the right of the door. The size will be determined in coordination with the City of Binghamton sign committee. And we're looking at perhaps replicating, go up just a little, right there, replicating the scrolled wrought iron that's across the street on the new city signs. So we're on the historic Henry and State block, and we are in a historic building, the 1913 building. We are one of 5 galleries on the street, and our goal is to step it up and look as good as the rest of them.
Wonderful. So I got a couple quick questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to the commission. Removal of the pre-existing sign, it is going to be painted to match the other facade, the other 2 panels up top. Is that correct?
Hiding underneath that white piece of plywood
Yes.
is the red, the rust color,
Okay, so
Third-
that'll be a
third raised panel.
continuation.
Yeah,
Okay.
indeed, those raised panels are plywood,
Mhm.
complete with the little chiclets.
Yeah.
They're in bad shape and they're being replaced with something historically appropriate.
Okay, wonderful. Your existing banner sign, which was not approved by the commission, has to come down regardless of whatever we say.
Okay,
That's gone.
Yep.
I very much like your sign. I like it as presented, strongly encouraging the scroll work.
Okay.
And at this point, I would turn it over for questions or discussions of anybody else on the board. Does anyone want to take a stab at this, or is this my day? Thank you, Dan. Always a pleasure. I would make a motion for the approval of the project as presented for 213 State Street for the removal of the pre-existing sign with the restoration of the facade to match the other 2 panels, for the immediate removal of the existing banner sign, which is not conforming with the City of Binghamton, for the addition of the hanging sign to conform with the city's requirements, the signage as presented in the diagram, so it has to look like that. And strongly encouraging the scroll work to be added to the hanger. Do I have a second? Mary Ellen, thank you. She's quick. Dan, you gotta get on your toes. All in favor? Okay. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank
Thank
you, young
you.
lady. Make it look pretty. Welcome, sir. How do you do? We need you to identify yourself. You're the mystery guest.
Corporation Counsel, City of Binghamton,
You have a name?
Robert Geary.
Thank you, Robert. Glad you're here. Okay, let's get rid of that. Now, we've got 34 Lyle Street. This is the YWCA, Richard Greco. Mr. Greco, come on down. Please identify yourself with contact information for the commission, sir.
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Richard Greco. I'm a senior consultant for the Foss Construction Group representing the YWCA of 80 Holly Street in Binghamton, New York, that is going to construct a new facility on this site of Lyle and Carroll Street. And the necessarily to do that, we need to demo this project on Lyle Avenue. Right.
Do we have a plan going forward? I mean, is there some pictures of what we're going to be doing? Yep, thank you. Not going to be a parking lot, right? Okay.
Pardon?
The 68 units of low-income housing or something like that. How many units was in that complex?
68.
Yeah.
68 units in the main hotel, and then the existing Urban League building is going to be renovated into a daycare center. That's what the building on the lower left is. That represents the Urban League building that will be partially demolished and converted into a daycare.
Not obstructing your view, am I? I can slide back. Yeah.
Step four. This has already gone through the planning commission too, correct? The YMCA building.
Say that again, please.
The YMCA building that they're planning to construct has already been through like zoning board of appeals and planning committee, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
The project was approved by the urban, the zoning and planning board. Back
This is
in,
actually, this is
23.
a picture of the entire building. It was connected to the Rock Bottom Fire Company number 7. It was 3 attached row buildings that were attached row buildings. The Rock Bottom Fire Company was demolished. That's why when you look at the building, this whole wall is not original to the building. They had to rebuild it after the demolition of the other 2 buildings.
Is there site plan showing the properties where the new building is gonna pop down on?
So
Back one?
you look at it, this is the street as it is now, and this is where the site is going to be. Here, hang on. This building is a privately owned building. And that's not going anywhere. You're gonna keep that. This is the BC Urban League building that's like right next to it. And this shaded region right here is, yeah,
Thinking watch up you not. I got you.
yeah.
Okay. So. This is the property we're talking.
Yes, this building right here.
And this is the footprint of the new.
Yeah.
Residential. Okay.
That's
Okay,
correct,
now
yeah.
now I understand. It's all those squiggly lines. Okay. Anybody have some questions or comments, please?
This building has no significance anymore, right? Not if,
Not that I've been able to determine. I see a lot of structural issues on the facade walls. If you look on page,
but that front was replaced and everything, right?
yeah,
That's
it's
what
all,
you're saying.
The storefront on the bottom of the building was replaced. Yeah, it's not original.
Okay.
the
I
roof
just wanted
line
to
is.
make
Yeah,
sure.
the roof has been replaced. That one wall is brand new. The storefront is
So there's
destroyed.
nothing.
And on the
wrong.
interior, if there was any kind of embellishments, trim, fireplaces, they've all been removed.
Okay,
This banister is the only thing I could find that was probably original to the original building.
So if you're looking at the photos, if you don't have them, I'll send it around. You've got a lot of structural damage on the rear facade for the masonry.
I
The
did
building's a
notice
lot of
that.
bricks that are coming. I'll send this over if you want.
No, I did notice that.
Anybody else need to take a peek?
Okay.
What kind of condition is the interior in? The interior of the building, are there structural deficiencies in there? Signs of water damage, mold, anything like that?
There's water damage in the basement mostly, mold. There's nothing, we had a pre abatement survey completed and submitted. And it will be abated before it's demolished.
And that on the floor, on the top floor, there's a lot of pigeon business. So obviously they got in somehow to the roof.
There's holes coming in from the attic.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Do we know how much it would cost to replace the roof and or bring it back to historic, like significance?
how much it would cost to restore back?
Yeah.
You don't have enough. That's a tough question, but
Well, has it been looked
there's
into?
nothing to fascinating to it that's structurally sound, I don't believe.
My biggest concern is the compromise for the masonry foundation.
Right.
You got a copy?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, no, I
just-
saw
just-
that.
Yeah, I'm
That
just not
is pretty
comfortable. Yeah. Okey doke, Mary Ellen, I think you're up. Well, first, is it lead agency or
Yes, declare Claude.
Okay.
Claude lead agency.
make a motion to declare Caud lead agency for, oh, where are we? Excuse me. 34 Lyle Street, second. Thank you. All in favor, us being lead agency? Thank you. We're lead agency and
Unlisted action.
make a motion to declare it an unlisted action. Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dan. All in favor? Unlisted action? Unanimous? Okay, Mary Ellen, I think it's up to you.
Haven't done this in a while. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? No. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? No. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? No. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies, public-private wastewater treatment utilities? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources? Example, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? No. Therefore, I move to declare a negative declaration.
Okay. That being done, I'm not in a reading mood. Who's taking over the next step? Dan,
I don't know if I
Thank
have
you.
the,
well, if you don't, we'll find it for you. I say that tongue in cheek. Compatibility with historic guidelines. You need it?
okay, I think I see it.
Okay.
So compatibility with historic guidelines. The City of Binghamton Historic Guidelines provide the following recommendations that address demolitions. Do not demolish historic structures that have historic or architectural significance within the City of Binghamton. Do not demolish a building that contributes to the historic setting and character of a district. Do not demolish a building that contains historic building materials or evidence of historic craftsmanship that would be difficult or impossible to replicate, or replace. Do not demolish a building that is a rare example of its type, style, period of construction, or historic associations. A building should not be demolished without definitive plans for the reuse of the property. The reuse of the property should never be a parking lot, which would generally have a negative impact on the overall character of a street. Do not demolish a building when reasonable efforts can be made to maintain its structural integrity. If a historic building is active and is earning a reasonable economic return, it is not appropriate to demolish the building, even if its return is not deemed to be the highest and best use.
Very nice. Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Given the post demolition use and the fact that does not seem like a reasonable effort to restore this building and maintain its structural integrity, to knock it down.
I second the motion. All in favor? Unanimous. Build something pretty, sir.
We're going to.
Okay.
You'll be very proud.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have 18 Broad Avenue, Broome County Land Bank. Who is our rep? Oh, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I am well. We're
Um,
glad to see you again.
Oh, thank you. My name is Jessica Haas. I'm the executive director of the Broome County Land Bank. We're located at 60 Holly Street, Binghamton, New York, 13901.
Okay, before you continue, sir,
I must recuse myself from this case on the account that Jess is my wife.
and a very lucky man you are, sir. And I see congratulations are in order. Yes.
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Okay, so Mr. Haas has recused himself. We are going to go ahead. Applicant Broome County Land Bank would like to demolish the structure at 18 Broad Street in Binghamton. Oh, You have a staff report? Looks like it's gonna fall down by itself.
So this is the condition of the building as it stands. It's in a I3 district, heavy industrial district. It's over by the Rock where most of our cars get repaired and gassed up. Foundation is brick. It's pretty straightforward. It's hipped roof. Sustained a lot of damage over the years.
Forgive me, I had to take an aspirin. Anyone have any questions or concerns regarding this one? It's kind of gonna fall down by itself if we don't do something. Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to declare Caud lead agents. Oh, yes.
What are they gonna do with it?
What are you doing?
No
with it?
parking lot, nothing.
No, no, I understand that's a requirement of the city. We have the two adjacent neighbors are interested in purchasing it. For green space, for additional space, but not a parking lot, no.
Wonderful. I'm gonna make a motion to declare Caud lead agency. Second, thank you, Jonathan. All in favor? Unanimous, minusing our recused commissioner, and I'm going to make a motion to declare an unlisted action. Second, please. Now I'm looking over here. Thank you. I telepathy, I knew that was going up. So the vote on the unlisted action or the lead agents, whatever I just said, unlisted action. Unanimous. We got it. Okay, Mary Ellen, if you'd like.
You're catching me up here, aren't you?
Well, we missed you so much.
Yeah. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation? No. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? No. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? No. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy, or it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies, public-private wastewater treatment utilities? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources? Example, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human development? No. Therefore, I move to declare a negative declaration.
Negative declaration. Okay, Mr.
All right.
Need, would you like to do this again?
So the compatibility with historic guidelines. The City of Binghamton Historic Guidelines provide the following recommendations that address demolitions. Do not demolish historic structures that have historic or architectural significance within the City of Binghamton. Do not demolish a building that contributes to the historic setting and character of a district. Do not demolish a building that contains historic building materials or evidence of historic craftsmanship that would be difficult or impossible to replicate or replace. Do not demolish a building that is a rare example of its type, style, period, or construction or historic associations. The building should not be demolished without definitive plans for the reuse of the property. The reuse of the property should never be a parking lot, which would generally have a negative impact on the overall character of the street. Do not demolish a building when reasonable efforts can be made to maintain its structural integrity. If a historic building is active and is earning a reasonable economic return, it is not appropriate to demolish the building, even if the return is not deemed to be the highest and best use. So I make a motion to demolish the building. Based on especially the structural integrity of the building and that does not present any unique characters. Almost hits every point on the list.
I will second your motion, Dan. All in favor? Unanimous. There you go. Now, don't change your seat. We have 61 Park Avenue. Applicant Broome County Land Bank would like to demolish the residential house at 61 Park Avenue. Please make your case, Mrs. House.
Yes, so I know that Dylan, viewed the property with our assistant director, Rob. This is a property that we acquired, approximately 2 years ago. We acquired it under.
Just a little louder, please.
Yeah, sorry. The land bank acquired this property a little over 2 years ago for the purposes of pursuing a funding opportunity through HCR. And that funding opportunity unfortunately did not come to fruition. Our land bank was deemed ineligible for the program. So we had tried a lot of different options as it relates to trying to salvage this property through various different funding sources. And, as we were undertaking our pre-renovation asbestos survey, we identified some questionable structural issues towards the rear of the building. But we moved forward because, we always like to try to save as many properties as we can. And after we went out to bid and we opened the bids, our lowest qualified bid for the asbestos abatement of the property was about $45,000. So it's not particularly financially feasible for the land bank to undertake, as that would be how much we would have to put into it before we even put a shovel in the ground. So
Can I
we
ask a
are,
question real quick?
yeah,
So
go ahead.
that was just for the remediation. That had nothing to do with the black mold or anything else?
Just asbestos,
Asbestos,
not
I'm sorry,
even
not even
touching lead yet. The house is also full of lead.
Thank you.
So we're pursuing, we'll be pursuing structural condemnation for the property. And we would like to demolish it, but we have tried on several occasions to try to save this property over the past few years, and it's just come to the point where it's not financially feasible or a good use of taxpayer dollars to try to save it.
I don't think I'd want to live in there even after you did the work on it. But that's-
I believe this was the property where there was a hoarder that there. It was,
Yes, it was the worst hoarding situation I have ever seen. Dylan, did you go with us the first time that we
Yeah,
went through it?
we
Okay,
did.
all right, so you remember it, yep.
there's a lot of black mold in that building.
Yeah,
Okay, so motion to declare Caud lead agent.
I'll make motion.
Second, no, he beat you this time, Jonathan. All in favor? Thank you. Motion to declare it an unlisted action.
Second.
Okay,
give it to him.
I'm giving it. All in favor? You gotta get quicker on this. Man. Okay, Mary Ellen, unless you would like to
No.
delegate authority to one of the other quiet commissioners.
I haven't done anything in 3 months.
Okay,
Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? No. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? No. Will this proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? No. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies, public-private wastewater treatment utilities? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources? Example, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? No. Therefore, I move to declare a negative declaration.
negative declaration. Dan, would you like to read or do you want to delegate that auspicious job to somebody else?
I can read.
Okay,
Maybe the next one.
okay.
The City of Binghamton Historic Guidelines provide the following recommendations that address demolitions. Do not demolish historic structures that have historic or architectural significance within the City of Binghamton. Do not demolish a building that contributes to the historic setting and character of a district. Do not demolish a building that contains historic building materials or evidence of historic craftsmanship that would be difficult or impossible to replicate or reproduce. Do not demolish a building that is a rare example of its type, style, period of construction, or historic associations. A building should not be demolished without definitive plans for the reuse of the property. The reuse of the property should never be a parking lot, which would generally have a negative impact on the overall character of a street. Do not demolish a building when reasonable efforts can be made to maintain its structural integrity. Building is active, is earning, if a historic building is active and is earning a reasonable economic return, it is not appropriate to demolish the building, even if the return is not deemed to be the highest and best use. I guess it's not going to be a parking lot after.
No, we have interest from adjacent neighbors. We haven't formally sent out side lot interest letters yet, but we will. And we do have one point of interest that is very adamant in purchasing it from us when we're done.
Okay, I guess given that and the efforts made for the structural that would need to be made for the structural repair to it. And the mold inside,
Environmental and health.
yeah, the environmental and health costs. I say knock it down.
I will second that motion. All in favor? Thank you. Always a pleasure.
If you don't mind, I'll stick around for 8 Cypress Street.
I don't mind at all. It's a
Great.
pleasure having you here.
Great, thanks.
So the applicant, Greater Opportunities for Broome, would like to demolish the structure at 8 Cypress. Are you also the representative for them?
We are, the land bank is undertaking the project on Greater Opportunities behalf.
Please.
Yep.
The floor is yours.
Yes, so over the past few years, Greater Opportunities has held this property. My understanding, and Greater Opportunities could definitely explain this better than I can, but my understanding is they acquired the property for the purposes of a low-income housing tax credit project through the New York State Department of Homes and Community Renewal. And once assessed by Homes and Community Renewal, HCR actually came back and said, we're not funding this, which is, in my opinion, very rare. HCR will fund just about anything. So the fact that they came back and said, we're not funding this it kind of speaks to the state of the property. So over the past few years, Greater Ops has asked the land bank on several occasions if we could undertake this demolition project for them. And we had a handful of properties in our inventory that were already slated for demolition, but we've identified a funding source. And the question as to whether the land bank will have access to additional inventory in the future is kind of up in the air right now. So we committed to Greater Opportunities that we would undertake this project for them. So there's 2 structures on the tax parcel. Both are in pretty bad shape. We do have a structural condemnation notice on both of them. And we would undertake the demolition on their behalf.
I
So
viewed
if-
both of these properties and there's no pictures of the interior because I wouldn't go in the house. That's a hole that's through the foundation. It's about 20 feet long. And that's a hole on the other side that's about 15. So there's really no hope of reusing this property. It has to be demoed.
Is that the rear
The
building?
interior shot is the rear building. This is the roof over the kitchen and that little yellow shack that's out back.
Looks like it was a garage or something.
No, it literally, it was a small place for a long time, I think.
Did you peek through the windows?
No, I didn't. I think it first showed up in 1904, the back property. So it's definitely old, but
So we have foundation cracks. You had a roof shot.
that is not a foundation crack. That is a crater.
Greater. We have a missing foundation.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think the other one showed roof compromise.
Yeah, very.
Okay. Questions, discussions? Okay, well, I'm gonna declare Caud lead agency. Second, please. Mary Ellen, thank you. Okay, Jonathan got it. He had his hand up. You were adjusting your chair. All in favor? Yes, okay. And declare Caud or declared an unlisted. What did I just, yeah, we're lead, okay, unlisted action, I'm sorry. Second. Thank you, Dan, all in favor? Everybody, good, okay. Mary Ellen, you're up.
Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? No. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use of intensity or intensity of use of land? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? No. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? No. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No. Will the proposed action impact existing public-private water supplies, public-private wastewater treatment utilities? No. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? No. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No. Will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? No. Therefore, I move to declare a negative declaration.
All in favor of the declaration? Wonderful. Mr. Need.
All right, maybe Brian can get the next one, but. So, City of Binghamton Historic Guidelines provide the following recommendations that address demolitions. Do not demolish a historic structure that has historic or architectural significance within the city of Binghamton. Do not demolish a building that contributes to the historic setting and character of a district. Do not demolish a building that contains historic building materials or evidence of historic craftsmanship that would be difficult or impossible to replicate or reproduce. Do not demolish a building that is a rare example of its type, style, period of construction, or historic associations. A building should not be demolished without definitive plans for the reuse of the property. The reuse of the property should never be a parking lot, which would generally have a negative impact on the overall character of a street. Do not demolish a building when reasonable efforts can be made to maintain its structural integrity. If a historic building is active and is earning a reasonable economic return, it is not appropriate to demolish the building, even if the return is not deemed to be the highest and best use. Just to confirm, this isn't going to be a parking lot again?
Not that I know of. Greater Opportunities is maintaining title throughout the term of the project. And my understanding, well, the land bank, we sent out side lot interest letters twice, and we were not successful in obtaining any interest from nearby or adjacent property owners. So my understanding, it's going to stay green space with Greater Opportunities until they determine what they want to do with it.
We want to make sure Greater Opportunities knows that.
Yeah,
It
absolutely. I have already discussed that with them.
can't be a parking lot.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to throw a couple of my 2 cents in. I'm looking closer at the pictures. You can obviously see the roof is compromised and there's undoubtedly water coming through. The craters leading to the compromised foundation appear to be on both sides of the building. And my most serious concern that I'm looking at is in the one photo. At some time, this was obviously a 3-family or a 2-family with a common. The main power feeds are going into the cellar at the location of one of the cracks, which was probably done by water damage. I don't think that this is a salvageable property. That's just my opinion, having done this kind of work. Did you make a motion, sir?
Sounds like one.
Sounds like a motion to, of no historical significance, let's demolish the building. Second, please. Dan, sorry, all in favor? Thank you. No parking lots.
Thank you so
Always a
much.
pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations once again.
Thank you.
The board would like to Recognize the reestablishment of Commissioner Haas at this time. Welcome back. Okay, 188 Court Street, folks. Glad you're here. Sorry for the delay, but we always save the best for last. Sarah, always a pleasure. I hope you're feeling up to
A little on the dizzy side, but okay, doing
Okay.
all right.
good. Glad to see you again.
Hello, everyone. Sarah Campbell with him and Howard Cattell represent the applicant FRG Realty and their representative Philip Akel here today with Delta Engineering, Chris Lynch and Anthony Panicia, and Mr. Akel is with us also. As you know, we're requesting permission for the demolition of the structure on Court Street. I just wanted to circle back for my benefit and everyone's benefit to discuss the criteria found in the legislation associated with the the right to demolish. The law states that the property should not be an outstanding example of a structure or memorial representative of its area, that it should not be one of the few remaining examples of a past architectural style or associated with a historical person or event of significance to the city, state, or nation. So there's basically two bodies of documents which govern the process in this determination. One is the city charter, which is also the laws of the city of Binghamton. The second is the book that several of I see that you have, the design guidelines. They were adopted in 2011 to supplement the laws that city council had passed until that time. So I'm going to just pass it over to Chris to talk about the first two criteria: outstanding example of a structure or memorial representative of its era, and one of the few remaining examples of a past architectural style. Anthony is passing out some information to you, which includes a comparative analysis of this structure as compared to the Phelps Mansion across the street, and also a letter from SHPO.
Thank you again for having us this afternoon. Christopher Lynch, registered architect, 20 years of experience working on a variety of projects, residential, historic, commercial. The first exhibit you'll see in front of you compares the historical context of the Phelps Mansion on the right side of the page that is directly across the street from 188 Court Street, and 188 Court Street itself, comparing the two historical elements of both. You can see from the Phelps Mansion, the integrity has been maintained for many of the historical elements, dating back to the original style of Isaac Perry, who also designed the New York State Capitol building. It's clear where this historical design came from during the Victorian period. Compared to 188 Court Street, it has been renovated numerous times over its life. While its age is historic, there are no real remaining architectural elements that we've been able to determine on the exterior that would classify this in any certain era. And none of the previous renovation work was ever approved or permitted from historical guidelines that the city of Binghamton was able to find in the records. So we have professionally determined that it does not have historical significance. The exhibit number 2 is a determination from the New York State Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation regarding the status of this property and their review. Jumping down to paragraph 2, we can see that SHPO has noted, we note that 188 Court Street is not eligible for listing in the state and national registers of historic places. However, it's adjacent to Phelps Mansion, which is listed in the state and national registers of historic places. Therefore, as subject matter experts under seeker, our office has reviewed the scope of the work in order to add more parking and have no concerns regarding potential impacts for architectural resources. Again, that is New York State Parks and Recreation Historic Preservation Determination. Your third exhibit is a proposed site plan for the removal of 188 Court Street and the expansion of parking for the neighboring commercial building, adding back more landscaping as part of the design than what is currently on site for the property. This being a building that is operated 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. Mr. Akel has offered up the additional parking for free city parking on weekends and evenings, being only 2 blocks from the baseball stadium. And there is a lack of parking in the area. We feel that is a very good concession and a good compromise for this project.
So just to circle back around, you're obviously very familiar with the guidelines as you've had a number of projects for demolition this evening. I did take the opportunity to read the whole document just to understand how this document works with the laws that have been established. And at page 2 of the guidelines, it recognizes that the styles, conditions, and issues associated with buildings and sites throughout the city are different. Therefore, the guidelines are meant to be a flexible document. To determine significance, a building must typically be over 50 years old, have high integrity, and be associated with an important historical event or associated with an important individual, have a high degree of architectural value, or be likely to yield archaeological information. The guidelines also indicate that they are not intended to stop or prohibit the continued growth and evolution of the community. And again, I'd just like to read, I think we're probably all in agreement that the architectural significance of the property is does not merit its continued existence. Based on the professional opinion that Chris just gave you, and also the letter from SHPO. At page 3 of, I'm sorry, page 113 of the guidelines, the criteria with respect to the parking lot seems to be the issue that we're talking about. The building should not be demolished without a definite plan for the reuse of the property. The reuse of the property should never be a parking lot, which would generally have a negative impact on the overall character of the street. Now, again, this is not a law. This is just a guideline. So it's meant to be flexible and to be applied flexibly to various projects. Unlike, for example, the urban overlay district, which is found within the context of the zoning regulations, which actually are the law. They must be followed. Those are not guidelines. They're absolutely requirements for development in the urban overlay district. We would submit to you that in this particular instance, that this parking lot would not have a negative impact on the overall character of the street. The parking lot is adjacent to an existing parking lot, and the house itself is a victim of what some might call modernization, positive or negative, but the street is no longer residential. It's a commercial C2 district, or C1, I'm sorry, service commercial district. It's located next to a church. It's located next to a commercial building. It's located across the street from the Broome County Public Library with its parking areas. It's located across from the Phelps Mansion with its parking areas. So it isn't, a parking lot is not something that is out of character with this streetscape. The guidelines, again, are meant to be flexible and address individual properties on a case-by-case basis. The street already contains parking lots, and This green space, which will be added, as you can see, will not harm the overall character of this area. In fact, notwithstanding that a property will be removed, it will in other ways benefit the community in this area, both in Mr. Akel's generous offer of public parking during many events, both at the library, at the Phelps Mansion, and at the baseball stadium. So it's not like you're taking down a structure and providing no positive impact associated with that.
Excuse me, this is Anthony Panicia. When I spoke with Chris about Philip Akel allowing them to use the parking lot, I just want to make a clarification. Philip will allow the church to use the parking lot, but his insurance carrier will not allow them to use it for public parking. So I just want to make sure that's clarified because I believe I did not say that to Chris correctly, or he did not convey that to you correctly. And Sarah just followed up on
Of
that.
course, I repeated it. So there we go with the telephone game. Again, I do know,
So
I do know. it's a-
clarification, private use, not public use. Well, if you're restricting it solely to one entity, not the other, doesn't it extend to being,
Stated that, the public to use it, the city to use it, obviously our insurance is ended up to do that.
but it allows you to extend the insurance to the church? But your insurance allows you to extend it to the church. Okay. A waiver to do that. Okay. Yeah, just getting clarity. Okay, sorry, Sarah.
Well, that's okay. So, and I'm sorry for repeating misinformation. As a practical matter, and not without Philip here, you know, people park where they want to park on a Sunday for a baseball game. And unless he's going to have people there actively keeping others out, you know, it is what it is. But my real point is that it isn't as if taking down this non-architecturally significant structure will have an overall negative impact to the area. It will be consistent with the streetscape that currently exists. And my guess is that most people will not notice its absence.
Unfortunately, that's probably a very accurate statement.
I just also wanted to make a comment regarding the short environmental assessment form. At question 12, you all know that when you complete these documents, the web program self-populates the answers, some of the answers they know. At 12A, we are substantially contiguous to the Phelps Mansion, so we do need to leave that alone. We do not meet the type 1 criteria as substantially contiguous to the Phelps Mansion, but we do need to leave that answer alone since it was a self-populated answer. In terms of the interior, as you know, that's not exactly, that is not one of the criteria for demolition, but we have made the offer to allow the Preservation Association to come in and take out any interior features that they would like to, so that they have a warehouse. Yeah.
Salvage bank.
A salvage bank, so that those could be utilized in other facilities or structures.
Now, Roger Luther, who's the county historian, and he's in charge of past, he wrote a letter that he would like to read out loud. You want to read it,
Yeah,
John?
I'll read it into the record. 8 years of mileage. And I'll pass this around. We have the one copy.
Thanks.
This is from the Preservation Association of the Southern Tier dated April 2nd, 2024. To the Caud Commission, subject 188 Court Street, Binghamton. Commission members. The Preservation Association of the Southern Tier submits this letter in strong opposition to the proposed demolition of the structure located at 188 Court Street, Binghamton. Built in 1885, this modest residence served as the first haberdashery store in the city. Since that time, there have been minimal alterations to the structure. Distinctive materials, architectural features, and examples of fine craftsmanship remain intact. The house is remarkably well preserved, and today, nearly 140 years after it was built, it remains structurally sound. Much of the historic character in the vicinity of this house, once known as Mansion Row, has been lost to urban development. Now to replace this well-preserved surviving example of 19th century architecture with a parking lot would simply continue to the gradual erosion of the city's fine architectural heritage. We encourage the commission to support the preservation of this property. Sincerely, Roger Luther, Executive Director Past, and the Broome County Historian. I will send this around. You need a copy or take a picture, whatever. Okay. I've got some opinions. If anybody else wants to start or something before I make my 2 cents.
Just also, I wanted to
please,
make
go
sure
ahead.
in the record that the letter from St. Mary's of the Assumption Church that was provided at the previous meeting
Please.
supporting the demolition of the project and the activities that they find to be difficult as a neighbor next door, that would be very helpful to them as they continue their mission next door. In terms of interior comments, I'm not sure what Mr. Luther's qualifications are in terms of the architectural significance of the property, but we already have a licensed architect who has advised that those architectural features are not significant, and the SHPO determination, more to the point, that the structure is not eligible for historic designation. I don't know what Mr. Luther's qualifications are.
Fair enough. Your first name again, sir? And you're the architect?
Yes.
How difficult would it be for you to replicate those fireplaces, the Addison glass and the etched glass? Are you competent enough to do that? Do you have the
As
background? to
as
do
a
it?
carpenter, no, I am not.
Mhm.
I am a licensed architect with, years of experience of looking at
Do
properties
you
like
have the
this.
resources available to you to
I
get that
do
work
not.
done?
No, I do not.
So
But again, are we talking about the interior of the property? Because that's not relevant for the demolition determination.
well, the windows are exterior.
The windows are not.
They're part of the house. Could you get some window shots up there?
My understanding that the windows were replacement.
That's Addison glass. That's not replacement. The center's etched. You've got 2 more on the west facade. Can you skip to the others?
Those could be removed.
Aluminum windows were installed over those.
Over the outside at a
Correct,
later
yeah.
date, but these are the original exterior windows. Can you refabricate them?
Remove them.
Sarah, I have a question real quick before you can finish this if you want about the SHPO letter.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned that it was a determination by SHPO that it wasn't historical. My understanding of this is that it has to do with the seeker piece and the question of whether or not it qualified as a type 2 action. I don't see anything in here about it being a determination that it's not historical. Maybe I'm missing something. I just want to make sure that I'm clear.
Well, the determination is that it's not eligible.
But that's not what this says. It doesn't say it's not eligible. It says it's not a type 2 action under seeker.
Eligible for listing in the state and national register of historic places, the first sentence of the second paragraph.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
We had,
This is,
we had a discussion with them previously with respect to whether it was a type 1 action, and that determination was that it was not.
this was the email I received from Daniel Boggs. Yes, not eligible. Too much altered loss, especially on the outside for SNR eligibility. There are some interesting intact elements on the interior that might be sufficient for Caud, but not enough integrity to pass the NR threshold. My partner review is complete, but tech has yet to weigh in on the review. However, they are only looking at the proximity of the nearby listed manor.
So what there is hiding under the siding if it were there.
I can only assume under the siding is the original clapboard, which is what I found one picture, and off in the distance, you can kind of see that it was clapboard on the outside and there was a porch.
Very cool.
What
Okay,
what about the fencing out front? That almost looks like a wrought iron. Do we know?
The fencing.
Yeah, I know it's a minor element, but I noticed it was cut out of the,
You have a picture of the front.
Yeah, I think there's a better one. Keep scrolling.
It covers most of the front facade, 50 feet maybe.
The other thing that should be noted, I think, is that so this is 241 Front Street. And we had to do a full review of that for a project. Now, determining whether something is historically significant is mostly left up to the community. So. It's 8.
Yeah, and just to circle around back to the criteria though, and it's an outstanding example of a structure or memorial representative of an era or one of the few remaining examples of a past architectural style. I mean, I don't mean to be crass, but just because it's old doesn't mean that it's historically significant.
I mean, the form's intact and itself is a like structurally sound building.
Well, I would go a little further, following up on what you just said, you know, historic structure, part of it's the last remaining residential structure on the north side of that block at all. There is no other. Is it historically significant to that block? Yes, it is, because it's the only existing example of what that block was before urban renewal. There's nothing else there. That, I think, in itself allows it to qualify as a historically significant structure. The house is in very good condition when you look at it structurally. You look at the interior shots, you look at the pictures in the cellar, there's a new high efficiency furnace in there, new utilities. It does not look like what we saw up here in the previous hour of this meeting where the roofs had collapsed in, the foundation is crumbled.
Well, that's interesting that you bring up those previous applications because I noted in those, most of them, you had no idea what would happen with the properties.
Except
You
it would
did
be a parking
not,
lot.
the only question you asked was it going to be a parking lot? That and although you've noted that that certainly wasn't a requirement of your approval for demolition.
If your house looked like this on the interior, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
So then the message is
But
to
it looks-
allow it to deteriorate to that
No,
point
message
and
is
then
to
come
maintain
back.
it. You have something very unique. You have more than sufficient parking area already if you were to go to your backyard, which is already paved, and just smooth it out and make it
But that's
useful
not,
again. I
that's,
think you would get
that's
your
not
adequate
the,
parking.
that's not the question,
I
Mr.
understand.
Chair. The question is, does this property, how is it different than the other 4 properties that you just allowed to be demolished without almost any information at all about, you have no professional analysis of the structural situation with the properties. You have no idea what they were going to be used for. And for some reason, this particular property is eliciting concern beyond what seems to be the normal practice. Even though we've provided you professional opinion with respect to the integrity of the property, the cost associated with remediation, and each of the criteria found in the legislation.
We did have many of that on the previous applicants. We also had visual reinforcement of the deteriorated state of the properties where they constituted a health hazard.
Yeah, and I've
Indeed.
given recommendations before on buildings that are structurally unsound.
Wade, you're a building inspector. What did you think?
You Frank probably speak better than I.
The building and codes is office, our opinion is that the building is structurally sound. It's been as it is for a number of years. Probably older than any 2 of us our ages in this room together, at least. And while there are some damages that might be costly to repair, such as a roof or something like that, it is possible. It is up to the owner of the property to decide what to do with their property within the bounds of the law.
Yes, sir.
So another guideline is to not demolish a building when reasonable efforts can be made. Gritty. And looking at this structure, it seems like reasonable efforts can be made, especially according to the cost estimate of $123,515 to restore it back to its preserved condition. And I think that's what separates this case from the other cases, is that in order to replicate or repair the other houses that we've proved today, you'd have to rebuild the entire. As like not many that need to be upgraded. In addition to that, the cost of the parking lot and the demolition combined, I would imagine exceeds the cost. Has there been a cost estimate done for this plan that's been presented today? We were told at the last meeting that the reason this couldn't be salvaged is due to like financial hardship. And I'm just curious to know what the proposed parking lot would cost compared to the cost estimate that was presented to us to preserve this structure.
We haven't done that analysis, so we can't give you that answer. But what I can say is this, you're a structural PE. Any foundation wall can be corrected. Those ones that were there, it did not appear in the meeting that there was any letter of determination from a structural engineer that they were unsound. And when you say the word reasonable, what is reasonable? I can fix every one of those foundation walls and make it, but you never once say that it's cost prohibitive for them, but you keep throwing it's cost prohibitive for what we say is cost prohibitive, and you're saying that they can't fix it. Yes, they can fix it, but we're getting away from the real facts. The facts are you got two architects who are registered under New York State that have determined this is not historically significant. And one of them is from SHPO, which is up in Albany. You have opinions, you guys all have opinions, but those are not facts. The facts of this case are the interior doesn't matter because that's not in your guideline. Cost could be an issue, but you're bringing it up here, but you didn't bring it up in the other four that could be remedied. As a PE myself, we can fix all those. Would they be 50,000? Would they be 100? Would they be
Nothing made by
10,000?
man that can't be remade by man.
Pardon?
Nothing made by man that can't be remade by man.
Correct. But the point of this whole determination is the building historic or not? And you have a determination from SHPO that it is not.
I'd
Point,
I'd like to
this,
see what's underneath the siding. If
it's
there's-
not relevant. You can't see it now.
Yeah, but if there's original clapboard on a building.
What,
with a
are you gonna
18
pay for him to take it off?
I mean, I don't know if it's within our purview, but
It's not within your purview.
it's a.
The purview
it's
is
an
you're looking
important
at the building
feature.
as it is. And,
So-
and there are no architectural elements as determined by a New York State registered architect in Albany who runs SHPO, period.
And there's also local, part of the decision does come down to the Caud Commission on this, and we weigh in locally.
Local designation is local, has nothing to do with SHPO.
I understand that, but you don't have an opinion from an architect that it meets historic. You have opinion from a historian who's not a registered architect, and you have no other opinion other than the opinions in this room. That's not factual.
Yeah.
I think you guys should talk to your attorney.
Excuse me, I have a question. Did the architect from Albany come down and look at it?
No, no.
He did
I
not.
just,
We uploaded photos, much to what.
just like we've
Yeah,
seen.
exactly.
So it does seem like there's going to be a debate on state versus local on the architectural significance, at least.
Well, this is like what so 241 Front Street was not, it's not eligible by the state standards. It is a locally listed historic property. It is a landmark property. And it's still standing because of that.
Right, so, I mean, I see it coming down to the one caveat of the post use, because as, what's your name again?
Sarah.
Sarah, as Sarah presented, you know, there's some wiggle room on that in the sense that is it a positive, net positive use after, or net positive, or net like negative use after? And so, I mean, I think that is very important to consider as the parking lot. I mean, it explicitly states that from the beginning, the intention was to turn this into a parking lot, which puts us in the Caud Commission in a difficult position. It's,
Well, again, just a guideline, not a law, right? Not part of the legislation.
Correct, but those guidelines were put in place to protect the historic significance of the areas of downtown Binghamton.
But again, the guideline, I mean, there's a difference, right? Just by the very definition between a guideline and a law, though, it says generally have a negative impact on the overall character of the street. So then the determination is, would this use generally have a negative impact on the overall character of the street as opposed to this house?
I'd say that's where it becomes a little bit of a subjective.
This is not
determination of the
subjective.
board.
On paragraph 2, the architect from SHPO writes,
I'm not talking
therefore,
about the
no,
architectural significance.
no,
It's-
right here. Therefore, as subject matter experts under seeker, our office has reviewed the scope of work in order to add more parking, and we have no concerns regarding potential impacts of architectural resources. It's right there in black and white.
I know, I'm talking about the city guidelines, not the architectural significance for the state.
Yeah, so to try and put this into a sort of a clarified system for the board, SHPO has said that this property is not eligible for listing on the state or national registries as an architectural resource or historic place. Separately, Caud has the ability to determine whether or not this is a historical building, given its architectural features as well as any sort of historical significance it has. So there's a separate determination by this board as to whether or not it is a locally significant architecture or historical building. It can take into account what SHPO's opinion is, and what their position is with regard to this being a state or national registry building. But it's a separate determination by this board as to what the status is.
Yeah, and I am curious what's underneath it, because otherwise you could just cover something up and demolish it. You know, you could send something into SHPO and it'd
Well,
just be,
I think it's a unique structure and that it's again, the only remaining residential structure on the north side of that block. They used Phelps Mansion as a comparative, which if you look at it, is the only remaining residential structure on the south side of that block of Court Street. The residence that stood immediately next door on the west was a mansion very similar to the Phelps, as was the one continuous. They are both gone and they're both parking lots. The only residential structure on the south side of the Court Street block here and mentioned is the Phelps Mansion. The only residential structure on the north side to give us any sense of historical significance that it was a neighborhood is 188 Court Street. And I think therein lies the problem. For me, if the roof had collapsed through and it was right, this building's occupiable right now. So were you asking a question? Trying to get hold of, oh, I'm sorry, Dan, okay. I'm bouncing some thoughts back and forth. We could call for a vote at this time. Or we could potentially table it to give you another shot at a different avenue. I know where I'm leaning and I don't know where everybody else is, but Sarah, what you gotta,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
do have one question. I mean, I would say with everything that's been presented thus far, I don't think if it is our goal to do that, I don't think, we've made the case, at least in the previous two meetings, that the building itself, at least on the exterior, is historically significant as opposed to, what they presented with the architectural report and the SHPO report. However, my question, I don't know if it's for Robert or Dylan or Juliet, how much latitude do we have with the post-use parking lot piece? Is that a guideline, more so than a piece of legislation? If we could get some clarification on that, I think that would be probably helpful for everyone to make a determination.
yeah.
So I would say with the parking lot question, it's not like this council's necessarily, this commission's necessarily bound. We're like, if it's a parking lot, it absolutely cannot allow it. What I would say is that the guidelines which were adopted through city council make a very strong recommendation against allowing parking lots. And so, there needs to be a strong basis for that decision to move forward with a parking lot, similar to, having an analysis of, is this a historical building? And then, is it appropriate to demolish a historical building and replace it with a parking lot?
I mean, I appreciate that state letter. And that does obviously, I mean, that's a strong argument. But I'd say the post use with the parking lot. And as we have local leverage on this, I would like to know what's underneath the clapboard, because that's a game changer and the state did not review that. And that's, I mean, those are like the two big things, at least in my part. I mean, it has a significant building form, but once you include some of those elements, it all of a sudden turns back into this, one of our structures
Yeah.
that we have
Still
had
the only
around
one.
since the 1880s.
Still the only one there.
If you want to look at 241 Shenango or Front Street, that is a local landmark property. You don't have to be fancy.
But this isn't.
When's the last time that 188 Court was occupied? Was it
I
2022?
believe it was sold July of
2023?
last year, wasn't it?
A year or so.
I think that's what separates this property from many. Correct, as an office, and another guideline of ours is if it's a historic building is active and is earning a reasonable economic return, which it's not currently, but it was a year ago, it is not appropriate to demolish the building, even if the return is not deemed to be of the highest and best use. So having been a law office, a business less than a year ago, there's a high potential that it could be once again. And I think that's what separates this from some of the other cases we saw today too, is that those have been vacant for decades.
I'm assuming if it was earning a reasonable economic return, they wouldn't have sold it, had a reason to sell it. Also speaking to your question earlier, I'm sorry to rest of the time, but.
Mr. April, could you?
Sorry. Just.
They actually sold it because they retired.
I believe Martha Lyons is still a practicing attorney. I talk to her on a regular basis. You mentioned the fact that we consider the dollar amount.
Microphone, sir, please. I'm sorry.
You mentioned that we consider the dollar amount necessary to rehabilitate that building to be prohibitive, but you questioned what is the cost of building the parking lot? We don't believe that dollar amount is a reasonable investment in that building. We do believe that the investment of the parking lot is a reasonable investment in the building next door, which we own at 184 Court Street.
True that if you rehab the building, you could rent it out to another law office or something like that, that would bring in an economic return versus a parking lot that just provides spaces for the building that's already there.
Well, we're concerned that we won't be able to maintain the economic viability of that much larger building next door. If that makes sense. Once upon a time that. Go ahead.
Additionally, did you purchased this building in July or August of last year?
December, I thought.
December?
Closer to December.
Was any research put into parking lot approvals before the purchase? Or was the purchase, did that take place just with the assumption that this was going to be approved?
Don't know that we have an answer for that. Did not do any. But like I said,
Delta Engineers occupied that building at 188 Court. The building does not meet your zoning requirements for parking. We had 45 people who had to go park at either St. Mary's or at another destination, Sons of Italy's. So that doesn't even meet your code. And if he were to, What he's trying to do is provide a contiguous property that will provide sufficient parking for that building. That building is 23,000 square feet. We had to move because we outgrew the building. We had no parking, and at night, my staff was scared. I had to walk my staff down the street. What we're trying to do is accommodate a parking lot that meets the needs of the area, has been proven by SHPO that it's not historically significant, would not have an adverse impact, and in addition to that, provides the client viability for 184 Court Street going forward. Whether he sells it or not, there will be sufficient parking that is closer to your ordinance that is not there now. And we're putting in green space, and you guys have the right as this board or the planning board to add much more green space that you would like. What we are trying to do is get the building closer to compliance with the parking requirements as per the city of Binghamton. In doing so, that building has no value to him, and based on the professional opinions we have, it has no value to us as representing him as professionals. Yes, anything in life can be remediated, can be fixed. There's always a cost. It's very cost prohibitive to, like on the prior projects you brought up, to remedy those buildings, but it can be done. But that question was never asked of them. Here we keep talking about what's underneath the siding. No one would know because that wasn't one of the questions that was raised, and that wasn't raised by the New York State Historic Society. They looked at it and it said it had 0 element features and it's not historic. We're here to talk about whether the building is historic or not, professionally by registered people, not by opinions.
I don't know.
So-
Who controls the parking lot, kitty corner next to the Phelps Mansion?
That's St. Mary's.
So St. Mary's has
No,
the one across the street?
The one across the street?
We control the parking lot at 193 Court Street, yes. Just for this building, as we did when Delta Engineers occupied. the
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I understood it correctly.
even with that parking lot, as Anthony mentioned, we just simply do not have enough parking for this building. You made the suggestion earlier that we could simply move back and maybe smooth out the area that's behind the building. We don't own very much of that land behind the building. So we've got that maxed out. I think we have maybe 7 parking spaces currently behind the building. This represents obviously a significant investment for us
Mhm.
to purchase this property, develop this parking lot, and make these improvements, whether it's the landscaping or whether it's moving the handicap parking from behind the building to way up in the front, closer to the front door where it belongs.
The rear of 188 Court Street at some point is totally paved. There's a little tree root growing up or something, but it had been paved maybe 40 years ago. And through lack of maintenance, it just needs to be dozed and repaved. I don't know how many parking spaces it would afford you behind the building, and I'd be curious as to that.
I believe that rough pavement area is outside of our property line.
So,
Do we have a footprint?
well, just a quick
It
thing,
appears as if it's all one property. It is not.
without going too far down sort of this parking lot path. I would note that it's not really appropriate to consider what sort of impact this would have on the zoning of another property. You could certainly use this in consideration of what sort of economic return could be generated from the parking lot as part of any sort of lease agreement. Or could consider it as part of, the character and that impact on the neighborhood, but it's not really appropriate to weigh the value of this parking lot as directly benefiting a separate parcel that's not subject to this determination outside of those factors.
With due respect, you lost 100 jobs that I had to move to Endwell because we didn't have parking. So it does have significant impact. It may not in your eyes, but it did to me. I made a business decision because I didn't have parking. And the next client is going to have the same issues going forward.
So how many parking lots are being, or how many parking spaces are being proposed? Is it like looks like around 30, 28. And if within the footprint, it looks like there's only 7. So what's kind of interesting, I'm guessing is you have the 3 on the side here that extend up the building, and then it's maybe with the accessible parking spots, maybe 8. Given the kind of the shared interest with the church next doors, you could put most of these spots in and have that second entrance.
You can't do that because the church has funerals throughout the day. They have events throughout the day at luncheons, and we can't impinge on their property. As a business owner, I had to pay for parking for my staff, $20 to $30 per place. We had 80 people, and you just said there were 7 parking places. It's totally insufficient, and we're
But
trying to
you're
provide.
You're losing 7 because of the footprint of the building.
No, I know, but in the back, I think when we were there, we only had 7.
Yeah, but what you have,
And
laid
now,
out
like you
here.
said, there's close to 30.
right,
So it still doesn't meet the zoning requirement, but it allows a business to function in a better place that they can provide parking for their staff. It may not provide all the parking,
Right.
but what we did is we had the women park close to the building because they had a significant concern, and the men had to walk further away.
right. Yeah, I'm just saying for the, when we're weighing like the loss of this historic structure.
It's not historic. You have to stop saying that.
Well,
That's
yeah,
not a
it's
factual
just
statement.
It's a subjective at the local level.
Okay.
And so we have to take into account, we're doing this for a net of 7 parking spots, which is, I don't know,
I don't
that's
follow the net of 7.
Yeah, could you just lead us through that net of 7 argument?
right. So you have, if you were to like put the footprint over where the existing structure occupies, it looks like there's about 7 parking spots that would be taken away. Compared to the plan you have.
No, I'm asking the person that knows that.
So,
You're saying if you left the structure and still did the parking area.
yeah,
Right, you don't be losing 7 spots.
If I could speak just from our perspective, so we have a tenant in that building now. Their lease does not run forever. When I started taking care of that building, it was vacant and it sat vacant for many years. It was very hard to attract the tenant. We were lucky enough to attract Delta engineers who moved from a site where they had even less parking, if any parking. So the potential here is for us to lose a tenant because of the parking issue, because of the safety issue. I remember we left the last meeting and there was a shooting a block away here in front of the ball diamond. People are concerned. Our tenant is concerned. They've expressed those concerns to us. So we're trying to accommodate that. And we have to make this property, this neighborhood marketable for a tenant to stay, marketable to attract a new tenant. I don't know what kind of tenant would lease that building at 184 Ford Street if there was some old house in the middle of the parking lot. I don't know. And as to the question, Brian, you asked earlier, and I'm sorry I didn't answer it at the time, but no, we don't presume the opinion of this board or any board. I looked at that house. It never, I didn't see anything historic about it. So perhaps I'm naive. Perhaps I should have asked Chris. Perhaps I should have asked the state, but I didn't see anything there of historic character.
You mentioned 297 Main Street last time.
Yes.
That was next to the Giant.
That is near the corner of Main and Matthews, next to what used to be the Giant at 281. Would be in that grass field somewhere.
So this is the parcel that was allowed to be destroyed to be a parking lot right here. It was a 4 square. It was built in 1924, I believe. This American 4 square houses are very common. You'll find 20 of them on any street, but it was never turned into a parking lot.
Read a little bit more that's on the other side.
The other end of the market. We approved that to go down. Over here? Yeah, to the right of the bank. I don't know if it's the green space or if it was parking. Came before us with addition to parking and run down. Because we knocked that down for you.
That farther on the left,
We did that one too.
that was approved as a park.
No, it was approved for
That was-
demolition, not parking.
What is it? Oh,
But
Yeah, the Copper Cricket.
can you go up the street here to the right of the, yeah, up there, a little further on the,
Oh,
on
yeah.
the right. So right hand, I'm sorry. We knocked that down for you guys also. I was on the commission at that time too. And,
That's-
but that house was crappy was the word I was gonna use, so just go with it because it's an understandable
We-
word.
We
But
know,
you got it, I mean, it's gone.
and we no longer own that shopping center that's now.
Well, you
owned by
did when
the
you
city
came
church.
before the board to get the house torn down, as well as the other one, which we've been very cooperative.
Out of
and many things.
curiosity, how are they using those parcels?
Parking lot.
How?
They're not using them at all, the green
No, I
space.
mean, in their plan, how are they making use of those spaces? As
Parking lot.
green space, as parking?
It was your plan when it was presented to us for the demolition. And I don't recall the exact use for the plan at that time, but the buildings were deteriorated and came down.
But the church is gonna be using them for parking lots. They're my client, and that's already been approved.
At church, which church are we at now?
New
Is it-
City church, that's.
Oh,
going
yeah,
on.
yeah. So that's,
That's all
okay,
gonna be.
gotcha. Gotcha. Shame the old facility didn't have parking. What a magnificent building. The old Shriners Temple. Oh, my God.
Downtown.
Jeez, yeah. Those Damascus lamps and Elgin's front window, all that stuff came out of there. They're beautiful.
Well, I know they're very excited about Main Street. That I
Yeah,
can tell
it's gonna be a nice facility for them. They're a very proactive church. It's a good thing. Okay, well, I have a wife and I'd like to see her sometime this evening for dinner, I certainly have an opinion about it. I think it's a beautiful building. The historic part of it, I think, is subjective. Is it historic locally? Obviously, the state isn't saying so, but it's not theirs, it's ours. I find it to be historic because it's the only remaining residential structure on the north side of the block, which if there were two, maybe you'd get one, but there's one, and it's the only one, like the Phelps Mansion. And they tore down several similar to the Phelps Mansion to get their parking lots. I'd rather see the Phelps Mansion, but it's neither here nor there. I'm gonna call for a vote at this time, and I'm gonna make it a roll call vote. I believe, if I'm correct, that they could always Oh,
I have one thing.
oh, please, I'm sorry.
No, I was letting you finish. Did you say you couldn't put parking spaces in the back?
No, we can, but we don't own although it may appear that this property goes all the way to the back, to a fence, we do not own that. That is somebody else's land.
Then whose parking area is this?
I don't know who owns that.
I mean,
St. Mary's owns that.
that's St. Mary's.
Yeah.
Yeah, the church has to go.
All right, because I only remember this part being St. Mary's.
Yeah, I'm a former parishioner, we used to park out, what place I get my.
Right, back here.
It's sort of just an existing aerial.
Yeah.
So.
How big's the congregation now there? I'm sorry?
This is all.
Oh, no, how big's the congregation at St. Mary's? How they doing?
You're right there.
They're still plowing through.
Yeah, I knew Father John pretty well.
You're
He
right.
just
That-
retired recently. Super nice guy.
Existing parking.
Okay. And this,
So yeah, if they own
This
the
is
back,
St.
they would
Mary's,
pick up
but
more
you're gonna
parking,
add
but they
all
don't
this.
own it.
So these spaces essentially move across.
What do you guys
All
own?
this, we move the handicap, which is currently here, in the building.
up there.
We move it up to here.
Okay, because I thought you said you couldn't do that back there.
Well, perhaps I misunderstood. He had said, hey, smooth out the back. I was just under the
Right.
assumption that he thought we.
No, I'm looking at this. Yeah. So the 7 spots are right there. They would, and this is all your space?
Probably, yes. We have up to this black line, which is where you.
Right there.
So those 7 spots.
Need agency numbers for that.
Okay. Okay, so you're adding 6 there.
I see 7.
Okay. So you're adding at least, well, you're adding about 6 here. If it's 7, you're adding 6. And then you're adding 12 here.
That's
Because I was wondering, because you said you couldn't smooth that out,
Well, again.
that you can't do
I
that.
was really referring to all of
This part right here, which is St. Mary's, but you've got that. Okay. All right. I was just, yeah, there you go. That's it.
So we were just saying, we don't own this back here.
Okay.
We own just these 7 or 8 spaces that are here. So we would essentially move those across to the property line, add all these, add all these, add all these, move the handicap, which is currently here. Move the handicap close to the front. If that makes sense.
Right, yeah. No. Would you still have access to these? Or where's the line, yes, I'm asking this black line, is that roughly this line here?
Yes, as
Okay.
far as, so this is roughly our property line, this black. We don't just purchase this red. And we would just, like I said, move these spaces to that property line. So
Yeah.
they come down here, we add this green space. These all end up being new spaces. These all end up being new spaces, and these end up being new spaces. If we made it apartment.
Well, then they wouldn't be able to back out.
Okay, so we're showing multi-directional ingress.
Yeah.
So we're taking these parking spaces away, putting them over here, using them for.
Yeah, for two-way.
If we made it directional, one way, we do not have those parking spaces made, on other spaces on the side, you could actually go on the other direction.
We did look at a one-way option, but we didn't really deal with say, it was about the same, but without the convenience of two-way. That's what we're proposing as far as number of spaces.
About the same number of spaces.
Yeah. Right, yeah. So we thought the two-way traffic would give more convenience for the time. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see some.
So, yeah, that was yours.
Did I steal anybody?
No. Oh, hers.
We're gonna welcome the gentleman back for just a minute. We're talking about parking. And I'm gonna say what I said when I asked the question and then give it to you for a second. So my question with regard to the proposed parking, because it was multi-directional. I'm gonna talk loud and stand up. Okay, does that work? So the proposal was to get rid of these spaces, bring them down to this side with the increased parking here and here, having a two-way street going through. So you could exit and enter on either way. My question to the gentleman was, if it was made a one-way, could we not save these parking places, increase the parking places here and here? And he responded to me that it would do about the same thing, but I want you to say it in your words.
All right, we did present Mr. Akel on a number of parking options, both one-way and two-way, and there was not a significant difference in the captured number of net additional spaces between the two, that the two-way option seemed to be more convenient for any tenants, current or future.
Okay, thank you.
No, that was still with the house being removed. Yep, correct.
Convenience. My question is, what about safety?
Sorry, what about safety?
Yes. Do you have any determination as to whether it's safer being two ways?
I would know, as I recall, and it's been a while, but I think with the one-way traffic plan, we had angled spaces.
Yes.
And hey, I grew up in a supermarket. We always tried to get those spaces to be straight, not angled. So that's
You have
my
24
preference.
feet, width between these two anyway,
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
but if you put spaces here, you would not.
Correct.
Right, that's why I'd be able.
I have to beg pardon for a run up the stairs for just a minute. I'll be right back.
I think the answer to your question is both plans meet all applicable codes, whether they're one way or two way.
And making it one way doesn't gain you parking spaces, so you might as well make it, More convenient.
Two-way because it's safe.
yeah,
So.
it's safer.
You putting lights out there? They're gonna be going in and out at night?
People inevitably make the wrong turn into one-way
Right.
traffic.
Exactly.
Sure. Yes, there'd be plans, once we move forward with, the approval.
Cause I don't know how that has to be approved.
Sure.
I'm thinking about
Usually
that.
that's planning board,
Planning board usually.
because we gotta show them.
At
that-
least.
That the light pollution doesn't spill onto other properties. And at this
Right.
point, the parcels might need to be merged in order to have that happen, so.
Where it used to be. Along with that.
Well,
I mean, my thing is if it's, excuse me, there's green space increase requirements. They're only gonna gain.
Yeah, well, it's good doing it to return.
They're only getting like three parking. And what is our, it's tough, it's just tough, and they present it like states, it's just. I'm giving a new,
Set up operated both. No, leave it on. It's something like nothing.
Yeah, I don't know how much teeth we'd have, we can kind of like impervious. Yeah, I mean, you really. Yeah, well, I mean, only because of all right now. I'd have like the lawn area out front. That big problem. Yeah. It's not. It's fun. I just feel like something like giving people what they want, but it's tough. They increase the green space, they're forced to increase the green space, you're knocking down this building for essentially like necking of four parking spots. They have, that's like, you know, it's kind of a utilitarian argument, but. Wait, that's kind of where I'm at, not knowing what's underneath. Ironically, because I used the pay parking and I only put it in until like 1:15. So that would be, the irony of this is I'm probably gonna get a parking ticket. Because my timer's up. Yeah, right. No. You can't have interns anymore. They have to be paid. Perfect. Right. Yeah. More digital so they can track you and watch you everywhere you go. Oh, and.
So this is the abridged version of the long form. He's read 4 already. I'll take over the short form afterwards.
This one?
Read
Oh.
groups.
Do I have to read it out loud or? Okay.
Can I also just ask before we get started on that, is there any information that anyone can think of that we could provide you that would assist you in making this decision? That we haven't provided, because we're not really coming up with anything.
I mean. The siding.
The siding?
That was one thing that I would be interested in, see.
I would just comment that if there is original siding under there, which there probably is, that, you know, it was covered up for a reason. And, you know, the aluminum siding had to be, you know, fastened in some way, that it's probably not any better, you know, and worth saving at this point. And that would even add, because I'm not sure if that was actually in our original cost, to actually reside the entire house.
Yeah, and we don't know that until.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's one of the problems, so.
So is that something that?
Through the expense of doing that, which
Absolutely.
nobody is
Right,
likely
and then-
to
but they
do,
could
right?
Present us that
And
Wait,
if
you
it's an
could-
exorbitant cost to restore the siding, I mean, that's more of an argument, not knowing.
well, I think- So what we're trying to decide here, and not to make it a mystery, is, you know, should we hold over to get that information? Or should we ask to hold over to get that information? Now, I know that it won't necessarily change some people's mind, but if it is important to anyone, I'd like to understand that.
I mean, it's one of the things where. I guess it could help or hurt, right? It's not that,
Right.
it's not the last straw, it's not the last thing.
But you're curious about
I
it.
am curious about. it.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking of that idea, you're gonna have both the first and second floor and the pediments that you would want to do a sample of, because usually the pediments get a lot more intricate in the Victorian gingerbreading and whatnot. However, with the possibility of it remaining, should you start removing pieces of it, we would want to know that they would go back up, or you bring them off and paint the house or something. It just, we don't want them hauled off the side and then here's a 4 square foot patch and 3 or 4 pieces of the house that
Right,
that looked terrible, or it didn't look,
right.
it just looked like an aluminum sided Victorian house before. You know, for my opinion, this is only an opinion, Sarah, and we've known each other a long time.
Mhm.
It would be nice, but it probably wouldn't affect my opinion overall.
I'm pretty clear on that.
read me like a book, you know?
But we
So-
need 4 votes, obviously, out of the
understand.
6. So, you know, I want to put us in the best position
Sure,
possible. to
and I'm
achieve
not
that.
opposed to it, just that if it does come down and it doesn't get a demolition, it needs to get back up and
Right.
look prettier.
I'd put
Something.
it,
Right.
I'd put it this way, I mean. I don't know if that would put me over the hump. Now, if you found that it was like, nice intact, just to save you time, that would be a major issue from
Right.
in the negative, so.
Tough
One-
call.
Well, one question kind of throw out to the board, because I know it's come up at this meeting and it's sort of been bandied around in terms of what the cost is of doing the rehabilitation versus the cost of the parking lot and sort of weighing that economic viability piece. So if you were going to come back, I'd posit to the board that that might be something that it would be worth asking for if the applicant is looking to put forward some more information for you guys.
So the demo and rehab, the demolition cost and the cost of redoing the parking, of preparing the site plan.
Brian, is that sort of what you were looking for when you were talking about it
Yeah, and it
earlier?
has to be inclusive of all asphalt, sub-base, curbing, stormwater management, anything like that. Being in the heavy civil and transportation industry, I'm familiar with a lot of these prices, and what I'm seeing here is upwards of $200,000 to $250,000 in parking lot, plus another 20 to 25 in the building demo. So that right there is more than double what the engineer's estimate for the rehab was. And I've heard a few times that rehabbing the building is not financially feasible, but doubling that money into a parking lot is financially feasible.
I mean, I think we should also,
with-
sorry.
With this building being purchased in December, this was obviously the intent, but the building didn't need to be purchased either. So now that it's in ownership, you're kind of stuck with it. So that kind of brings me back to the point I made earlier, where a lot of this probably could have been predetermined before the purchase. There may not have been a lot of interest in buying the building where you had to buy it like that, like the residential market is right now. So there may have been time to explore some of those options.
And they can still put in parking behind the building more.
Absolutely.
And so.
Yeah, just not
it
as many
comes down to
spaces.
That 7 or 8 spots that.
Did you have a question?
No, just on the, financial aspect, I think, if I'm looking at this correctly, there should be some consideration for what the.
A little louder, I'm sorry.
So we should probably take into consideration, if we're going to look at the financial aspect, what the, owner sees or what the owner thinks constitutes a reasonable economic return or return on investment versus, rehabbing the building, what kind of economic return that might generate. I mean, they're not exactly apples to apples, at least in my view.
And it's sort of unique, that's another reason why we're here. And that's even if you were to use variance application, it is unique because he does own the building next door. And when he's thinking about his decision, it had to do with the continued viability of the building next door on the corner and the ability to achieve more parking to make that building continue to be viable. That's not necessarily what you're considering in terms of the demolition of the structure of the house, but that was certainly plays into the owner's thought process. It's not the viability of the house necessarily or the economic return on the house. It's the whole campus and how that plays into it. Which is different, right? That's not something that you consider all the time.
You articulated that better
And
than I did.
If by chance it went through that you could demo,
Yeah,
I would add an caveat that those fireplaces,
Yeah.
that stuff has got to be saved and given to is it
Preservation
past or,
Association or somebody.
somebody like that.
salvage.
There's stuff in that building that is definitely historic.
and we've offered that. I mean, we have no problem with that.
And that, I don't know if that's gonna add in, that's the reason I'm asking is, I don't know what the cost would add on when you're demoing. you got to get this stuff out first.
But that's a reasonable
But the,
ask.
yeah, so that's why I'm asking, you know, if you got approved to demo, I would want to see the windows, the fireplaces, you know, anything of that John would know more than I do.
Right.
I would want to see that
looks nice.
stuff saved.
We have no problem with that. none
Okay, but that
whatsoever.
would probably add into your cost.
And, you know, when we took down 295 Main Street, we offered past that same opportunity. Our only ask there was we want a certificate of insurance, just again, to please our insurance people, but you know, they took a number of elements out of that structure as well, and we have no problem with that at 188 Fourth Street.
That's important from the looks of the inside of that place. It's in good shape. If you got approved.
We have absolutely no problem with that.
Stuff that's historic in there. needs to be fixed.
We would certainly accept that as a condition.
Okey doke. I'd still like to see my wife for dinner tonight. Well, I think we're gonna go up to some wonderful restaurant, which will remain, unnamed at this time, at this point.
So I think our decision will be if we can request a table, so that we can look at that siding and just see what it looks like. Can I just ask the question? So we have an amazing situation tonight where all 6 members are present. That in and of itself is a challenge. So is there anyone who think like, are 5 of you not going to be here next month or who knows?
I'll be here July. I'll be here July, August, September,
June,
October, June.
June.
When does June get in here? Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought it was June already.
They answered that like a lawyer.
I just got back from Saratoga and I'm leaving for Virginia tomorrow. So I'm sorry. I'm just,
I love Saratoga.
it's beautiful.
The next
I was up
meeting
there
is
for the race.
scheduled, looks like for
Something
June
fancy.
4th. I have a baby due on June 6th, so I
D-Day.
may or may not be.
Delivery
present.
day,
Yeah.
D-Day, yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
That's pretty cool.
so if he's early, then I will not be here.
There's
But if
precedent.
he's on
I-
time, I will be here.
I don't find that to be an excuse as much as a reason. Yeah, yeah. And we have tried to arrange special sessions for
Yeah,
him,
you've been great.
which
I-
I would
by the
very
way,
much be inclined to
I
still
do
do.
appreciate that. I did not anticipate. I had my knee fixed. The knee's fine, but I've had vertigo for 3 weeks.
Mm.
So today was my first driving and work day.
We're glad you're here.
Yeah, it's a little dizzy, but not too bad.
Well presented nonetheless.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind us giving us that opportunity, it seems like that's the only thing anyone can think of that might help.
I don't want to give false hope either.
I know.
Especially with other.
Yeah.
People on the board.
That's why I said both.
Yeah.
We're inclined to give you every opportunity.
So we're gonna do the siding. What does the board want? The economic sort of not the economic, but the financial breakdown of the demolition and the paving?
You're ready.
And are those the only 2 things that the board wants? This is your last chance to ask for stuff.
Yeah, and so, and like getting finer grain than that. I think the net 7 or 8 parking spots, and if it could be like relooked to see. Because that carries some of the balance too, especially if it comes down to a subjective consideration of like the architectural value. More subjective for some of us, less subjective for some others, but I think that and parking analysis is important, especially if there's green space increases that are going to be required. Because then, if we're going through all of this for 4 parking spots, it's tough, it's difficult, so.
Also, the building seems to be viable for rental, be it commercial offices, lawyer, doctor, or residential. I mean, looking at it and looking at the infrastructure, you could walk in the door today and it's far superior to a lot of buildings that are rented in the community. So request for the parking financials. I almost called you by your dad's name. I'm so sorry. I look at Mike all the time.
Bad enough that you look.
Doesn't he? Isn't it amazing? It's a good thing.
then might as well see what it's gonna cost. I have an idea already.
Right.
I don't know if it's gonna swing my opinion one way or the other, but if this is gonna be prolonged to another month, it's something that's easy to add.
Okay,
Um,
Dan?
Yeah, and I guess whoever's in charge of green space requirements, does that fall under us
It's planning.
planning? Because they're gonna want to know that, especially if the calculus with the parking is then gonna be like,
And we're gonna want to see multiple samples of the pre-existing exterior structure of the
Right.
building.
and you can explain, you probably can speak to that better, how
you.
extensive they need.
For zoning requirements, it has enough parking spaces.
I'm more of the green space requirements. Just because if
I
they're,
understand.
yeah, if they're forced to put in more green space, then
And my initial question about the directional driving, the multi-directional versus the one-way. Um. I'd like to see a breakdown of what parking we're gaining or losing. In my mind, I think you've got it without tearing the building down. And I appreciate your architects and everything.
Yeah.
My background is I did architectural restoration professionally since 1981, and I've engaged in this all my life. Now I just do consulting. It's a cool building, it really is.
So the other
So-
thing we could think of was maybe just providing an analysis of the benefit to the neighboring structure with the added parking, just so you kind of get a flavor for everything.
Yeah.
It can't hurt.
You,
If I'm wrong, but I believe the city also has requirements for percentage of green space and stormwater management. Was that, were those two things considered for the number of parking spaces as well? Hmm.
Would you like me to have planning review this just for parking lot, unofficial? If it meets the
Planning board or Tito?
Tito.
Sure,
Okay,
that'd be great.
I'll have them kind of write it up and then send it out.
That'd be great.
Okay.
and I'm not adverse to special sessions if it gets us all together and we can do something for you.
So if this happens like now we are way outside my wheelhouse here, but if it happens fast, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
You know,
He can
let
contact us if we can
Bill
do it.
know
I think we'd be very happy to do it.
before the
not, we'll
baby comes.
Put you on the next month's session anyway.
And I'm around
Okay, welcome
for
back.
May,
Mhm.
in June, I'm at the end of June,
June, yeah. God, I got.
I'm here for the beginning of June. I got graduations after that out of town, so.
Then I'm going to make a motion at this time to table the proposal for 188 Court Street pending a review of the requested information. To come back to us.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
I'll
someplace?
second.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
We try to make this the most fun board in the city of Binghamton, the most
Not the
entertaining.
least fun, I'll put it that way.
Table to June 4th, was it? Yes, I'm sorry.
oh yeah, we have to keep the meeting open.
Motion to adjourn. Second, everybody, okay, we're out of here. Thank you very much, Phil.